Good morning. Today is Monday, February the 22nd, and we continue with our Lenten practice of reading from Bright Evening Star by Madeleine. The messages of Jesus' stories were important for me. My parents' loving God was not sentimental. My father coughed his burning lungs. I was nearly 18 before they burned away completely. Several times my mother was ill in bed with a nurse in a white starched dress tending her. I knew she was very ill, but not what was wrong. I suspected it was yet another miscarriage. I was the only baby who made it through the 9 months in the womb. But God was still a God of love who could be trusted. In the outside world, things were different. I was unhappy in school. One of the teachers scolded me for telling a story, and it took a while before I realized she thought I was lying. Story was a lie. No, story was truth. I did not fit in that school. I was shy and awkward. One of my legs was longer than the other, and whenever I was tired, my knee ached and I limped. I went home from the sterility of school to the real world of story, to my favorite books, written by George MacDonald and E. Nesbitt and L. M. Montgomery and Louisa May Alcott and Frances Hodgson Burnett. Books which cared about honesty and courage and truth. Books which affirmed for me that God is indeed love and came to live with us as Jesus of Nazareth because we were so loved. Children of God, God who didn't mind if we limped as long as we were truthful. One of my godfathers gave me a beautifully illustrated book of Bible stories. I read it and reread it, turning the pages carefully, reading the story of God's love, which is gloriously true. With us it may be impossible. With God, nothing is impossible. I never tired of God's stories. The truth of story was always fresh and, despite repetition, always new. As a child, it was easier for me to understand that than it was later when I knew more. The story of Jesus' birth has been over-sentimentalized until it no longer has the ring of truth. And once we've over-sentimentalized it, we could commercialize it and so forget about Christmas and forget about what Christmas is really about. It should be a time of awed silence, but it has become a season so frantic with stress that the suicide rate mounts alarmingly, and for some people death seems preferable to the loneliness and alienation of Christmas. Somehow we've almost managed to kill the story, but not quite. It was still there for me when I was a child, and slowly turned the pages of my beautiful Bible book. I loved the story of Noah and all the animals. God wanted to save not only the people, but the animals too, for God made all the animals. They were different from people, but because God had made them, it seemed to me that they too were children of God. I loved the story of Joseph and his wonderful coat and his jealous brothers, and how in the end they all got together. But my most favorite story was Mary Magdalene, seeing Jesus after the resurrection and hearing him call her name, and then knowing who he was. And I knew that Jesus calls us all by name. And Jesus was the God we call by name. God, a loving parent who just transcends all our limited and limiting sexisms. In my Genesis trilogy, I often use El, the earliest name by which the Hebrews called God, instead of him or her, he or she. And I find that helpful, and I hope unobtrusive. Chapter 2, Beyond the Silver Hairbrush. There was much to wrestle with as I was growing up in New York in the 20s. Survivors of the war played frantically. Another war was brewing. Father, I begged, there'll never be another war, will there? My father would not lie to me. He explained the lineup of the nations as mistrust grew in the Balkans. I did not want to hear, but I felt the breath of war like wind from the dark clouds on the horizon. But how can God let there be another war when war is so terrible? God does not cause the wars. We humans do. But why doesn't God stop it? We are creatures with free will. God refuses to interfere with our misuse of it. Thus began the continuing question of God's omnipotence and human free will. God gave away power when he made creatures with free will. That was a strange thought. God, who is all power, gave power away. And yet the inability to give power away lavishly, lovingly, is greater than hanging on to power as human beings try to do. With us, power is control. With God, it is freedom. So then, if God has given us freedom, and if freedom is good, why is there so much pain? If Jesus came to save us, why do we still turn around and kill each other? Thank you for joining us today for our daily Lenten reading. I hope your day is full of blessings, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. So take care, and God bless.